Welcome back to the Strength and Speed Podcast. I'm your host, Strength and Speed owner and Mudgear Battle Alliance Pro, Evan Prepares. I got another guest with me on the line. For the second time in a row, I've got Rachel Waters, another Mudgear Battle Alliance Pro. Rachel, say hi.
Hi, everybody.
Before we get to this episode, a quick word from this episode's sponsor. So this episode is brought to you by Aurora and UFOs. Aurora, it is cold out, and Aurora makes heated apparel. So I've been using their jacket a lot now that it's winter. And it's been really cold, especially after this year's World's Toughest Mudder. I've been freezing. I feel like I'm still recovering from that. My core temperature still feels lower than normal. Or maybe I just don't like being in the cold as much. So I've been really enjoying it.
It's been a cold winter. It's been cold.
Yeah. And then UFOs, because what we're going to be talking about this trip is, this podcast is a big trip we have coming up. And I will be wearing my UFOs on the plane because they are super comfortable. And a great recovery shoe and good sandal, especially for the summertime, but the opposite side of the spectrum. But great. It's what I wear before races. It's what I wear after races. Highly recommend UFOs. I had someone in the World Toughest Mudder community ask about recovery footwear and saying that their feet hurt, or they were our friends of theirs' feet hurt, and I recommended UFOs, and they were like, well, they tried that, and, their feet still hurt. And I was like, well, honestly, if your feet still hurt and you're wearing UFOs, you should probably go see a doctor. I'm not.
Yeah, I wear mine around the house. They're my, every day because my hardwood floor, when I don't like to go barefoot on it. And that's my go-to in my daily life is my sweatpants and my UFOs.
Yeah. Actually, after World's Toughest Mudder, it hurts to walk around barefoot. It hurts too much. And I put on the UFOs for if I'm not, at all times, unless I'm laying in bed, I have them on pretty much all times post World Toughest.
Yeah, I try to avoid the sock with sandals look, but it's only okay if you're wearing UFOs. I think you can pull it off.
Oh, you need to get the shoes. They have shoes now. So
yeah. And I'll need to get some shoes. I've only got the sandals.
And they have fuzzy shoes too for I think for men and ladies for warmth.
Okay, get some fuzzies.
All right, let's jump into today's episode. So today is our pre-race episode. We're talking about Hannibal Race, Kuwait. It is the first OCR World Championships qualifier of 2023, and Rachel and I are going to Kuwait in, 7 days, exactly a week.
Yeah, a week from now, I'll be at the airport getting ready and so excited to go, and also really excited to spend time with you, Evan, talking about it as someone who's competed and traveled there before, so that you can give me some insight about what to expect and hopefully educate some of our friends in the racing community about what it's like over there if they want to consider making the trip sometime.
Yeah, and this episode is especially relevant because even if you're not going to Kuwait, Spartan World Championships is back in UAE, United Arab Emirates again, if I'm correct, in Abu Dhabi. And the cultures in the Gulf Cooperation Council countries, so basically Kuwait, Qatar, UAE, all these wealthy Arab countries in the Middle East are all very similar. They have a very similar culture. Now, and there are differences, so that's a very broad statement, so don't dive into that too much. But as a general rule, they are
compared to our culture. Yeah.
Correct.
Just generally speaking.
Yeah. So, initial thoughts traveling to Kuwait, concerns. Rachel, why don't you start it off with any kind of questions you may have had? I know you talked to Brenna in advance, who's already been over there twice before, plus the Lebanon. So
yeah, I think there's a couple of parts, right? There's the race itself, which we can talk about, what to expect with the obstacles, the terrain, the other athletes, just kind of learning about our sport in another part of the world. So I kind of want to pick your brain just to get feedback about that, what to expect as an athlete competing. But then I'm also really curious and excited and a little anxious about what to expect just as a visitor to the area in regards to how different it is, right? How American is this? How, unfamiliar will this feel, as far as language and are things in English? Is that common to go to a restaurant and see things in English? Do most of the people speak English? Let's start there. When I get off of my plane, I go from Atlanta to Qatar to Kuwait. So, when I get into Kuwait, what can I expect from the people there as far as, the getting adjusted to talking to people and navigating?
Yeah, so everyone, especially at the airport, the majority of people working at the airport will speak English, right? Because it is a common language for travel. So they'll be able to help you in English. The signs will be in Arabic and English. There'll be a lot of the normal chain restaurants you've seen in the United States will be over there. There's Popeyes, there's Starbucks. Last time I checked, or at least last time.
Evan, do you think that Popeyes is in my normal?
Uh, so what's funny is I mentioned Popeyes because, and this is why, if you translate Arabic to English, so there's no P in Arabic. So when you translate it to when you transliterate it, it comes out as like essentially boobies. So because if you replace the P with the B, so whenever I think of fast food, I think of Popeyes in the middle in Kuwait because we would laugh every time we saw the sign. Because when we read it,
that's what I'm like. Why would he say Popeyes?
When we transliterate, we don't say boobies and start laughing like a bunch of
fair. Well, now we will. But like, okay, sorry. I was like, anyway.
Yeah. So a lot of like you'll see a lot of the signs. They're in Arabic and English, so you see both of them.
But even what about like once you leave the airport and you're going out into restaurants and stores and
Arabic and English.
Okay, well that's
a lot of the the restaurants will have the English on one side and Arabic on the other. So you'll be able to see them right next
I'm assuming most of the people there will be interacting with English as well then.
Yeah, so most of the people, I mean, there are people who only speak Arabic. A lot of the people will be interacting with will speak Arabic and English. Like obviously Amin is fluent in English, Arabic, and then I think he's got some French in him. He's got a couple other languages under his belt. Hiba, one of the other race co-owners, she speaks Arabic and English. And then a lot of some of the workers, some of like the build crew will only speak Arabic. But most of the people, we'll probably go out to dinner a couple times. A lot of the people we're going out to dinner with, again, Arabic and English, they'll be able to speak both.
Okay, so is it safe to assume that in their like modern education system, English is taught? So that's kind of is like that's what it sounds like.
I believe for higher education levels, it is taught.
Okay.
I know if as an Army officer, we send one person over there to go to their Command and General Staff College, their majors course, and it's actually taught in English. It's not taught in Arabic.
Interesting.
So I tried to go there. I did not get in. Long story short, they only sent one American. Someone else was higher on the priority list. I went to Fort Leavenworth, Kansas instead.
Well, now you get to go run an obstacle course race. So,
I do, yeah.
Okay, so I mean that's interesting. I didn't really understand that about the culture. Now, what about it? And this was a big thing that I even thought of, and of course my friends and family, because people don't know. A lot of people asked me, as a female, if there would be any different expectations for what would be socially appropriate for me to say or do or wear. And, that was a question that I had. A lot of people ask me, which is, I think a common thing that is maybe just a lack of knowledge from our part of the world,
Yeah, as a female, you don't need to walk around in a hijab or anything like that with your hair covered and all, just the eyes exposed or anything like that. It's fairly a mix of westernized. So you will see plenty of females walking around with everything completely covered. And like the only thing you can see is their eyes. Like that is normal. You will see plenty of that. But you also see plenty of Western people there just dressed conservatively. As a general rule, just conservative dress is appropriate. You don't want to be, if you were wearing something in the United States and you're like, well, that seems kind of risque or kind of bold, not the outfit you want to pack when you're going to Kuwait. I'll say
so it's generally a little more conservative.
Yeah, in general, a lot of people don't wear shorts. They typically wear pants, even the men. And then,
So in day-to-day dining and shopping. So what about, how does that differ in like an athletic environment?
So athletic environment, yeah, that'll change slightly. So, obviously the normal race clothes we wear, tighter race clothes, is a little more the norm. I normally race shirtless. I will probably race with a shirt on. You will see some guys racing shirtless, but it won't be, the majority of them will have shirts on. I'll say that.
I was considering with that, would it also give me a good opportunity to, wear a jersey or a shirt to promote a sponsor? But I was considering, wearing, depending on the temperatures, which I did look at, possibly shorts, but, maybe pants and at least a top for the race.
I think shorts or pants and a jersey would be appropriate over, let's say, a sports bra. Like, could you wear a sports bra and get away with it, and would anyone say anything to you? They probably wouldn't. More socially acceptable would probably be wear a jersey.
It's also not polite to be a visitor and a guest, and
Absolutely.
to, if you know better, to walk on the lines of something that could be offensive, right? I
Right.
have
I
plenty
agree.
of opportunities to race in a sports bra at home if I want to. But it's also just being respectful of, it's not all about always, what do I want to wear?
Right.
It's how is what I'm doing impact people around me. And coming over as an American, we're also representing our sport and wanting to, come over and be respectful. Because if I come over and act disrespectful, then, it could sort of, not that I'm responsible for the whole, view on Americans, but I'm representing our sport, and you are too, and our team and our sponsors. So that's good to know.
Absolutely. And for those of you who might be considering going to Spartan World Championships, right, in the Middle East, that's a little bit different because that is a world competition. So you'll have people traveling from all over the world. So for that environment, that would be more socially acceptable to race in a sports bra because you have all these different cultures converging versus Hannibal Race is a Kuwait race. So you will primarily have people from Kuwait. You'll get some people from there. There's a couple military bases in Kuwait, U.S. military bases that will come over. And you'll get a couple of, trickle of, maybe some Europeans or some other Middle Easterners. So it is primarily a more of a local event versus Spartan World Championship is a global event. So you'll get a lot more international representation there. So
and I'm very excited that it is more of a local event because instead of the pressure of international competition for a championship race, I feel like I'm going to have the opportunity to get to know the other athletes there. And, have you, having been more than once, have you met some of the same athletes? Do you know any of the athletes in the area, Evan?
So I don't know any of the Kuwaiti athletes. I follow a couple actually on Instagram that I've met.
Okay.
One of them, I'm not going to say her name because I know I'm going to mess it up. One of them I actually met at OCR World Championships, a Kuwaiti athlete. So I met her there. Hopefully she will be there. I haven't checked to see if she's going to be there. And then I follow a Spartan Kuwait athlete he's done some triathlons. He's like unbelievably lean. And then some of the Lebanese athletes will actually travel over. So some of the guys who've just been following Hannibal Race for all these years and have, some of them haven't missed an event because there hasn't been as many. They typically hold one, maybe two a year. And they were primarily in Lebanon, Kuwait. And, over 2020, I don't think they've held one since 2020. So they haven't held one.
Well, I'm sure everybody's going to be really excited to be back then if they haven't had one. So I'm really grateful for the opportunity to go. I know
you will see some of the local females will be dressed, long black pants, long black shirt, hair covered, just their face exposed, right? You'll see the full gamut of people. And that's always cool to see, just kind of the different cultural racing environment. But they're still getting out there, right? They're not just sitting there off to the sidelines. They're still running.
Yeah, that's I'm looking forward to really getting to meet the people. I'm also excited. So what can you tell me about Hannibal, Hannibal Race itself as far as terrain, obstacles, what do you love about it? What's not so much fun, but in that fun way,
Yeah. So this one is held at the Motor Park, which is, I believe, south of Kuwait City. Previously, the year Brenna went with Daniel Leonard and the year I went with Brenna, it was west of the city. So this is actually a new environment, so I have not actually been to this one. That being said, Kuwait, if we look at a hydrology map of Kuwait, it is one color because there is no water in the country. It is just desert. So when people think of the Middle East, you're probably thinking of Kuwait, where it's just desert as far as you can see, right? So like Kuwait City's off in the corner there. And then
so you're saying there's going to be sand.
Yeah. The rest of the country is basically a giant sand pit. So a lot of people when
beach
they're like, oh,
OCR without the beach.
Yes. A lot of people when, they like, oh, you've been to Iraq. It's like, yeah. And then they think of desert and that's not accurate, but Kuwait, that is accurate for Kuwait. It is desert. So it's got that city. Kuwait City is the only major city in Kuwait. And there's a bunch of neighborhoods there. And then we're going to be staying like in the heart of the city, right by the ocean there, the Arabian Gulf. And just south of the city is where that's a motorsports park. So I'm guessing it's going to be flatter than previous years because previous years there was a little bit more of running up some sand dunes. I imagine there'll still be some sand dunes. I think it'll be a mix of flat, smaller sand dunes, probably a little bit of concrete and probably a lot of sand. And if it's at more like motocross, I don't know what type of racetrack this is. Honestly, I haven't done much research. But if it's more
Yeah,
like,
well, because if it's motocross, I mean, that almost makes me think like Jacksonville. But the Jacksonville in Florida has swamp at it too. So probably just hills. A lot of times with motocross, they have a lot of those little small dirt hills because you're trying to make fun things to jump on your vehicles with. But that can be a lot of really sneaky type of hill work where it may not be a mountain that you're going up, but you're doing these constant, very steep in the sand, little inclines.
Yeah. When I think of motocross, I typically think of Raceway Park in New Jersey, which has, you run through the woods, a lot of flat area, and then you go to the track and you're going up and down of these tiny, sharp, steep hills.
Yeah, and you really can't even get speed because they're so kind of short and curvy and, kind of kill your legs going up these things. So that'll be kind of fun so that even if they don't have mountains and all of this type of terrain, that running up little hills in the sand is that's a killer.
Yeah.
What about the obstacles and they may have some new ones since you have been, but what can you tell me about how their obstacles are different than ours, what to expect, how it compares?
So you'll get a pretty good mix of kind of the standard OCR obstacles. So you'll get some low crawls, you'll get some walls, you get the tire wall, you get like a quad steps type of thing, maybe a balance beam or some other balance type obstacles. Typically they end the race, which what they call the Battle of Kana. So they basically pack a bunch of obstacles into the festival area, which is super cool for spectators. So a lot of times the main course, you don't get to see that much because typically it goes away from the festival and doesn't loop back until it finishes. But you'll get some obstacles along the path. As someone of your level who's very good at obstacles, nothing's really going to present a significant challenge for you. And then when you get to the Battle of Kana, it's just back-to-back obstacles. So there'll be things like a rope climb. Previous years, the rope on the rope climb was super thin. So it was actually a lot harder than it seemed. There was a warped wall, not too big. There's some balance obstacles, some traverse obstacles. And then the hardest obstacle was a bunch of rings, which actually, I know that sounds really easy, especially for a lot of our listeners. But what was actually hard is they were pretty far apart. So they were probably the width of, is if you were skipping holds on the Platinum rig. And, or for our Conquer the Gauntlet fans, basically the width of CTG rings. But the challenge was they were not set up in a straight line. They were actually zigzag. So you had to use your core and actually change direction of momentum. So it was a little bit trickier than it initially appears. I've got a really good picture from the race of me traversing those rings. But that's the hardest upper body obstacle.
For completion, or is it penalty?
I believe there is burpee penalty if you fail something.
Do you know if you only get one attempt and I know if they haven't had a race in a couple of years, they may have changed some of this, right? But I was just curious about, do you get to retry? How, because it sounds like what you're saying is that our obstacles that we see in our races may be a little more difficult, maybe on the grip, but
absolutely.
Again, if you're a race company that's only doing one or two events a year, you're not making championship events. You're doing more building that OCR community for all levels, as opposed to being, trying to build a competitive point series or whatever.
Right. Yeah. And I mean, the only other regularly reoccurring race in the Middle East that I'm aware of is Spartan Race. So Spartan has an affiliate in the Middle East that puts on regular races. So the obstacle is going to be a little more Spartan-esque. I know there's been some races in the Middle East in the past. Ashley Samples has gone to one in Dubai. But I'm not tracking any of those are still operating. So your primary competitor is Spartan, or primary other community building event is Spartan, but they're so infrequent. I wouldn't even call them competitor. I would say they work complementary to each other. They actually help each other out.
If it's Spartan, then you would kind of have more of a penalty approach probably, as opposed to a mandatory completion. If that's sort of the, brand that's driving a lot of your athletes in training and competition.
And with this being a shorter race, honestly, you kind of need to get through everything without having to do the penalty. Otherwise, it's really going to eat at your time.
About how long will it be?
So I think officially it was published as a 8K, was it? But historically, it's been a little closer to 5K.
So somewhere in the 3 to 5, 3 to 5. 4. Yeah. Call it 4.
Yeah.
Ish. 4-ish.
And just like America, when you say a race length and it comes out short, no one ever comes and complains like, hey, there wasn't more running. Everyone's like, yeah, I'm just happy to be done. And the obstacles are great. We could have used more obstacles or, etc. I've never heard anyone finish a race and be like, it was shorter than you said it was going to be. And I'm upset.
Sometimes though, I wish that things would be what they say they are, only because of the way that maybe I strategize. And like because sometimes I'll finish with a little bit of like, wait a minute, that was only 5.5 miles. I thought it was 6. I would have taken my gel or, whatever, like maybe maybe 5 minutes earlier in this, or I would have, whatever. But yeah, usually you would rather have it short than long.
I mean, I personally would rather have it preposterously long, but
for sure.
But I'm the only one, so I'm one of the few there. So
yeah. So what else do I need to know? What has been your, what do you think is going to surprise me when I go over there?
The hospitality is going to be phenomenal. Amin and Hiba just do a really good job. I swear I come back from these trips heavier than when I left every time, because the food is so good, and they're going to take us out to some great places to eat. And the way they order food, they order like family style. So they just order a bunch of stuff. So you don't actually pick anything off the menu. And you'll like finish eating and look around and it looks like you haven't even started eating, right? Like there's just so much food on the table.
Evan, so. I just told myself I was going to start working off all of that holiday stuff I've been enjoying.
No, in 2 weeks, you can start working that off.
Now I'm going to have to set it back a little bit. And I did look at their time zone. They're 8 hours ahead of us.
Yeah.
Which is interesting, just if any of our listeners are kind of curious about, how removed we will be. Because I had some friends asking about live feed, and I said, well, you're going to probably be asleep the night before, when I'm racing. And, Evan, do you want to touch on, the day that our race is?
The race is on a Friday, so it's the 13th, Friday the 13th to be specific. And you had commented like, oh, the race is a Friday? That's kind of weird. And again,
I thought I had the days messed up, right? Because I already know like every Saturday of the year, right? Because of racing. And I'm like, the 13th, that just doesn't sound right.
Yeah, so primarily a Muslim country, and the holy days in Islam are Friday. So the weekend in the Middle East is Friday, Saturday. It is not Saturday, Sunday. So, and
that's really interesting because I didn't know that. So it's crazy how, I've gone through the education system. I don't travel a lot, but I didn't even know that. So that was a really unique thing for me to learn, that we will be racing on Friday morning instead of what we're used to in the States, which is, a Saturday race day. So I thought that was a pretty interesting difference.
And you also commented that it was Friday the 13th, and I will share some of my useless trivia here. Friday the 13th got a bad rap because that is the day they arrested all the Knights Templar. So anyone, into conspiracy theories about what the Knights Templar are and do, do they have the Holy Grail, the Ark of the Covenant? Are they the bloodline of Jesus Christ, if you believe the Holy Blood, Holy Grail, or the Dan Brown Da Vinci Code series, which there's literally no evidence to support? That's another story. But yeah.
I think you're going down the rabbit hole.
Knights Templar were all arrested on Friday the 13th, which is generally why people believe that is an unlucky day. And then they were eventually tortured and confessed to a bunch of things that they didn't actually do, and then were burned at the stake. So, yeah.
Well, we're going to have a great time racing on Friday. And I actually like Friday the 13th. So I was excited, but I did have to kind of do a double take when I saw the date because it didn't line up. But, I'm really excited. I'm a little nervous about flying that long. I've not been on a flight, like on a plane for that long without getting off of it. So that'll be different. And then just a little concerned about, coming in as an athlete, sort of jet lagged with the time zone and all of that, how I'll be feeling race morning, but, hopefully try to rest a little bit on that.
So you're flying Qatar Airways, which is my second favorite airline. Emiratis is my favorite. But Qatar is a super nice airline. So you're going to have a great trip.
That's what my boss told me. He told me it'll probably be the nicest flight I'll ever take. That they're a really, really hospitable, good airline. So, and I'm flying direct too. So I'm going into Qatar and it's an hour and a half to Kuwait. So that really cuts on the travel, not stopping, for a layover in Europe. but it
what
will be
pay
long
attention
range.
to your stewardess because somewhere between America and the Middle East, they will go from like my hair's down, and then they will put on like the more traditional headdress where their hair is covered.
Oh yeah.
It's kind of interesting. It's just like you go to sleep and you wake up, and all of a sudden the stewardesses all look different. You're like, oh, that's interesting.
You're like, where am I? But yeah, my flight back, because it's longer to get back, I have, an hour and a half to Qatar, and then from Qatar to Atlanta, it's 16 and a half hours. So, that'll be a long time in a plane. So I'm looking forward to how comfortable that seat hopefully is. Take a nap.
Yeah, bring some activities. I'm sure there'll be plenty of movies like that you can watch.
Yeah.
Usually I run out of I don't watch a lot of movies in theaters. I can't remember the last time I was in a theater. But usually I catch up on my movies on international flights where it's like, no, I saw the last 4 Marvel movies on international flights. So it'll be cool. And then the again, back to the culture of Kuwait. If you're a car person, I don't know if you like cars, but you'll see, Bugattis, Maseratis, Aston Martins, all sorts of crazy cars in Kuwait. So if you're a car person, you'll enjoy it.
I'm just super excited for all of that. And I had looked up, the food online just to get kind of a gist, right? Because I'm actually gluten-free, so I don't do flour. So I was just kind of like poking around and looking, and the food looked really good. So I'm excited to have some, delicious, authentic, different type of food and just kind of broaden my horizons a little bit and meet new people. I mean, don't get me wrong. I'm excited to do the obstacle course race because, the racing and the competition's what I love, but I'm more excited for the opportunity to just kind of expose myself to the people and the place and, kind of change who I am based on what I learned that's not in my little bubble anymore. So that's what I'm really excited about.
Yeah, I think that's the right attitude, and I think you'll enjoy it.
I'm still going to go over there and try to,
Yeah, we're going to win, right?
Put down some work, Evan. I got to go there and show everybody how we do it over here.
Yeah, typically, the female pool, much like America, is there's a couple of really fast females, and then the competition level drops off pretty steep, pretty quick. And I'm not saying there's just based off numbers, there are more males that race than females. And females typically have at some point in their 20s and 30s typically have other priorities like having kids, etc. So
and I think looking at the sports, differently, our, obstacle course racing is really big in the US, and we have so many different race series and events every weekend all over. There's a lot of access to the sport itself. And so that also drives up more athletes. You're going to have more, our training has advanced. Just looking at since I started, how many more people there are out there now. Spartan didn't used to have an age group, right? Now they have so many competitive people that they had to make, to band it out into elite and age group and all of that. And so part of that could be is if there aren't as many race opportunities, you're not going to have as many pro level because, if they don't have anywhere to race, that's going to kind of change that dedication level maybe and focus as an athlete where they may be doing some of this, but more other sports too.
I think in 2019, Brenna lost to someone that was a road runner, right? So I think she was like the 10K champion, if I remember correctly, of Kuwait. So that's kind of where you don't have to worry as much about.
I would definitely be losing to a 10K champion of anywhere.
Yeah, so you don't have to worry about obstacle course races. You have to worry about road runners who have transitioned over, and they won't be able to run their road race pace because their heart rate will spike after the obstacles. Yeah, but they will put down a solid pace. And I remember, now that I say it, I remember in 2019 when we were there, I'm like a mile and a half in, and we come to a part of the course where it bends back on itself. And I saw a female like right behind me, and I was like, what in the heck? I was like, I'm running pretty fast here. Like, yeah. I'm pretty sure I shouldn't be getting chicked at the Hannibal Race in Kuwait, but I opened the gap on her in the second half of the race, especially when all the obstacles came.
Well, because you were running scared.
I was. I was like, I didn't fly across the world to get checked. I did.
Yeah, but that also plays to the idea of if their major exposure to the sport is through Spartan, and not mandatory completion, it just develops different athletes.
Yes.
And then kind of what goes there. And, it's great though, just to see the sport. It's crazy that it's international that way. And I think that kind of leaps to sort of something you and I had also talked about, like touching on and talking about this sport growing, right? And and more international competitions that are going to be happening next year, and trying to get universal affiliated groups to compete internationally. So I'm excited to do this because I'm also watching how our sport's growing in that capacity, and other potential to travel and race athletes from different countries. So this will be a really cool first step for me. Also excited. I want to do OCRWC, so it'd be nice to just go ahead and try to qualify, get it out of the way, and it'd be really a fun experience to do that, at Hannibal Race. So that's one of my goals.
Sounds good. I think you're going to do great. I got high hopes for you, and hoping I can put down a solid showing myself. So we'll see how it goes.
I'll try not to. I don't think I can catch you, Evan, but
if you come close, I'm gonna pick up the pace. So run as close as you can, because it helps.
If I see the back of your head, I'm gonna yell something at you, so it's me coming, and you'll pick it up. No, you're quite fast. You're much faster than I am. So, are there any? What about heavy carries? Sorry, no, that's random. I'm like, ooh, do I get to carry anything?
I think there was one heavy carry, and it was short. I don't remember it being significant. I'm honestly pretty bad about remembering obstacles. I'll like completely black out during a race.
You've also done so many races that like it all.
That's true. That's true.
You're like, they all start carry one sandbag. You carry them all. Occasionally you have those few really bad ones that you remember. Like really specific points in races. But I mean, I'm the same way. I can't even. I'll be doing like an ultra, right? And I'm doing like the second loop of the beast, and it's like, I've never been here before.
Yeah. I'll be at World's Toughest Mudder, and I'll be like, all right, I got 3 more obstacles left. And we'll be like 60 miles into the race, and I'll come around a bend, and I'll be like, right, there's these 2 also.
Yeah, yeah. Like, or you're like, I'm lost. I haven't been here yet. You're like, yeah, you've been through here 8 times already in the past 12 hours. It's like, oh wait.
So you mentioned kind of the growing international competition. So I wanted to talk real quick. Again, you're about to get just Evan's opinion. I know I write for OCRWC, but that's not, in no way is this their official opinion. Just kind of as someone who's been in the sport, regularly involved both in the front as an athlete and then also on the backside of the industry. So FISO, Federation Internationale Obstacle Sports Federation, whatever we want to call it, right? It's the organization that's started by Ian Adamson, and they have this global organization, but then they're essentially establishing these national organizations within, right? So I know the Philippines one is pretty active. There's some others in Europe, and they're trying to start an American one, or at least I think maybe the American one's already been stood up. I'm not even sure. But so this is the organization. This is not OCR World Championship. This is a separate organization. These are the people who put on the event. I remember there was like a 100-meter World Championship in Russia in I want to say it was 2019. They put on, and by put on, I mean, what they do is they take their International Obstacle Sports Federation and they slap their label on an event that's already existing, and they say, all right, this is now the national championships, or this is the world championships. And they've done that in the U.S. They did it once at a Spartan race I believe it was in Florida. I want to say.
Yeah, I think it was.
Did you go to that one?
Florida. I went to something in California, but I think that was more related to USOCR, because I went to one in California where I had to shoot a laser gun in December of, I want to say it was 2018. Maybe. I think it was 18. But I think that was like an attempt at creating, and I think that was the US, but I did shoot a laser gun at one. Yeah, which was odd. All
right. So I know they held one. They slapped their label on one Spartan event in, I think it was in Florida, and I want to say 2017. I want to say in 2018, they held the quote US championship in Black Diamond obstacle course race in Ohio. And there was a very poor turnout. I want to say if you were a female and you showed up, whether you ran age group or elite, you were more likely to get a medal than not get a medal. I think something like there's something like less than 10 people did not get like a podium medal for the females. That's how poor the turnout was. For the males, it was a bit better. But I think overall, if you showed up to that event, there was a greater than 50% chance you got an age group podium medal. So not a great turnout. Again, this is Evan's opinion. In my opinion, they've been saying a lot of stuff, but haven't really followed through on anything. So I've had someone reach out to me when they first stood up. Hey, you want to help get this started up? And I said, yeah, let me know what you need, what help you need. Fast forward 2 years, I get same comment, but from a different person. My response is the same. Let me know what help you need. And kind of like I told them a little bit about some of the backstory. And then we're on round 3 of people trying to get stuff stood up in the U.S. Again, my opinion is I think there's a lot of people involved that have very good intentions. I think there is not a lot of stuff actually happening. And what I really like about Adrian at Adventurey OCRWC is how things are beneficial to both, right? So they establish someone as a qualifier. The qualifier gets to advertise their brand as an OCRWC qualifier. They don't have any specific restrictions they put on the brand besides like make sure you post results in a timely manner, make sure you identify who the qualifiers are, etc. But they don't impose any other restrictions. Where I think the Obstacle Sports Federation is going, they're trying to impose restrictions as far as, standards for wall heights and stuff like that. But what I really like about OCR in general is its variability. That being said, they recently announced that there's a there's an OCR Triple Crown, right? So you have to run a World's Toughest Mudder, you have to run the Spartan 3K World Championships in Abu Dhabi, and then you have to run the 100-meter OCR Champs course in Belgium. Now, the OCR Champs course is affiliated with FISO, the Obstacle Sports Federation. It is not affiliated with the 100-meter event at OCRWC in Mammoth Lakes, California. And what I don't
what do you get if you get a Triple Crown?
I don't know if they've published the prizes yet.
So this is like an elite. Because I kind of saw that. I mean, I didn't really read into it because I immediately look at, World's Toughest Mudder. I'm like, yeah, I would maybe do that. But then I looked at that. I'm like, I'm not going to those 2 places and doing those other 2. Like, I'm not going to do a 3K. I'm not flying there to, and I don't want to commit to that level of international travel until I really 100% know that something like this would happen.
Yeah. And there are other events going on those weekends. So it's not like you're traveling just for a 3K or just for a 100-meter.
Okay.
That being said, what I don't like is that...
Like, wait a minute. Like, I don't know if I want to go all the way to Belgium for it. That's pretty quick.
So what I don't like is that to me, it's purposely misleading. Like, it says OCR Champs. So, like, they took out they took out the word, instead of championship, they just put champs. And it's like implied... It's very easy if you're not involved in the industry to get confused and be like, oh, the OCRWC is in Belgium this year. It's like, well, no, it's not. It's in California. So it seems purposely misleading. And then if you go to the 100-meter OCR Champs website, their event schedule. Now, let me ask you if this sounds familiar. Their event schedule is Friday, there's a 3K. Saturday, there's a 15K. Sunday, there's a team relay. And there's a 100-meter going on all weekend with the finals on Sunday. Does that sound familiar?
I've definitely done that format before.
They literally copy and pasted the OCRWC website schedule of events and put it on their own website. And they're like, there it is. There's our championship weekend. It's like, are you guys serious? Again, I've seen this play out multiple times over the last 6 years. I've got a lot of reservations here. And when FISO was starting and they started doing their 100-meter championships, from my understanding, they were like, oh, we're not trying to be competitors with OCRWC. We're just trying to grow the sport and blah, blah, blah. And we fast forward a couple of years and they're like, it looks like, well, now you're in direct competition because you literally cut and pasted their schedule.
Well, yeah, and when you look at those 3 events, I mean, that is asking for a very well-rounded athlete too, because, you can't just like the 2, I mean, and if we're just talking about from a U.S. athlete perspective, right? Like World's Toughest Mudder is a very big undertaking. Not just because it's 24 hours long, but because it's, the travel to and from it, the cost, that you can't race before and after like the weekends, because I mean, it's a very big event, right?
Yes.
Like in the scope of what it takes up as far as resources and time and energy in your life. Well, when you look at it as a U.S. athlete, that the other two that you would have to do, which are both, pretty far travel, it's not like a quick trip where you can fly in Friday and be home Sunday, like, stuff in the U.S. You're asking for three really big expenses, 3 big trips to be able to achieve all of that. And for me personally, I just don't know that I would want to do that, especially when there's, the lack of, when we're talking at least the Spartan brand, they're going to even take away burpees and go to penalty loops. And, I think that, and I think you and I have talked about this with World's Toughest Mudder, and I don't want to go too far into, because again, this isn't like what Rachel's opinion is about Everything Matters. But one problem I have with World's Toughest Mudder as a competitive event and having it part of a high level championship like what they're proposing is that you help each other on the obstacles. And I think that that's awesome. I think that Tough Mudder, World's Toughest Mudder, is fun because of that. It still takes a lot of physical work, but as far as assessing athleticism within the sport of obstacle course racing, I just don't understand how, of the 3 races that you would link in that, one is going to be one where people aren't doing obstacles themselves. Like, again, I'm not taking away the mileage that you run, which is a huge feat. I mean, I've done 2. World's Toughest Mudder is hard, but I just can't understand why I'm the only person that ever seems to say that why is World's Toughest Mudder being used when you really look at it from an obstacle perspective. It's not measuring the skills that each individual has as far as obstacle proficiency, endurance, and ability.
Yeah. You got a very good point. You got a very good point.
And I love World's Toughest Mudder, and don't get me wrong, it's really hard, and it's awful, and it's wet, and it's muddy, and it's exhausting, and and it's hard, but I just don't understand why a board of an organization decided that that's how you would measure athleticism and link cash prizes to it for a Triple Crown. But whatever. Anyway, that's all I'll say about maybe if people disagree with me, but that's just an odd choice to me. If you're really talking about, a seemingly high level international competition, like those 3 races. Anyway.
Yeah, that's it's a very good point. I think it's just the culture of Tough Mudder. You'd have to create a separate event like the 24-hour Spartan World Championships for it.
Yeah, well, I've heard that they're not doing it anymore. Like, I've heard rumors that Spartans, because now that they own Tough Mudder, with their cancellation of Tahoe last year, I've heard some rumors from people I know that are kind of in the Spartan outskirts, will you say? So this isn't like official news, right? That there may not be an ultra championship with the Spartan brand anymore. So that's maybe why World's Toughest Mudder had to be picked as a 24-hour race. And that may not be true, but that's what I've kind of heard, that Spartan may pull that event. So the 24-hour option is World's Toughest Mudder.
That makes sense. The Spartan 24-hour had a lot lower turnout. Same thing with when OCRWC did a 24-hour event. Again, their turnout was a lot lower than World's Toughest. World's Toughest has a massive turnout, and it's a 24-hour race, which, again, typically drives a lot of people away. But at the same time, they've built this community around it that people just keep coming back. So,
well, and exactly,
it's the most prestigious, when we talk 24-hour racing, hands down.
But also because of the camaraderie of helping each other, and it's a whole different experience for, the athletes that keep an event afloat are not the ones winning the prize money. It's Correct. Your open wave. And so I think the camaraderie and good culture that World's Toughest and Tough Mudder has is what drives that race being so popular, as opposed to, a Spartan. You really got to want to enjoy that 24 hours because you're doing it by yourself.
Yeah.
But
we strayed a little. So back to
sorry.
No, it's fine.
I could just talk about all this all day. So
I thought that was all good. So anyway, looking at establishing an American OCR federation, or whatever you want to call it. It looks like, again, this is from Evan's outside perspective, from the little bit of research I've done, it looks very similar to USA Triathlon. So USA Triathlon, when you can either pay for your membership, and then that gets you into any USA partner triathlons, or you can pay a one-day pass for USA Triathlon, and then so essentially it's an extra like $30 onto your race registration, and you get to run in that USA Triathlon sponsored or, endorsed event. Now, as someone who did triathlon for a couple of years, USA Triathlon as a age group or open wave athlete does absolutely nothing for you, in my opinion, besides take your money and send you a sticker, right? So I give them, I think at the time when I was paying, I think it was $30 for a day registration or like $75 for a year registration. So if you're doing three races a year, it makes sense. But essentially they take your money and then I have they just do whatever with it and you're just out $75. And I think that, to me, that looks like the model that the American OCR Federation is looking to impose. But again, I don't think that's a good thing. I don't think more structure and more bureaucracy over our sport is necessarily a good thing. Now, what I should do is bring someone from the Obstacle Sports Federation onto the podcast to actually discuss this in depth. Haven't had quite time to my schedule at this point, but we'll look to do that in the future. And I hope I'm wrong, and I hope their hearts are in the right place, because I think a lot of the people who I've been told are involved, and a lot of the people who are on the backside are genuinely interested in pushing the sport forward. That being said, I don't think the bureaucracy model of just adding levels of bureaucracy and rules that don't, like, if I pay an organization a fee, I want something in return, and don't just be like, well, here is a 15% off code to a brand that you can get a 15% off code through from any of the other brands, right? Like, I want something legitimate. I want some actual feedback, or I don't want like, all right, so I pay $75 to these people and it goes to helping like the U.S. national team travel, right? Like, I think what's cool, one of the things that's cool about our OCR Pro team is I'm not accepting, people aren't paying us for stuff, right? Like, we don't have a charity or Patreon to get money, and like the open wave athletes are paying for the pros to go places. That's what we have sponsors, and that's what we have. That's what we produce content for. So the only time we've quote unquote taken money from open wave athletes is when we've held a weekend seminar at the Conquer the Gauntlet gym, or we for a couple of races we did short course. We set up a short course at Conquer the Gauntlet. So we're always giving something in return, and I'm just slightly concerned. The direction we're heading is we give money to someone and then they do whatever they want with it, and there's no benefit to us as athletes. And when I say us, I mean the broader us, like anyone who's going to be paying into this organization.
Well, yeah, and I think there's just one of the beautiful things about our sport is that there are so many different options, and you have different brands doing different things. And part of it is until you get all of the brands on one page, it doesn't really matter what groups you make. It almost can just turn into like just another group of athletes focused at a specific type of race or series. I love seeing the sport grow, and I'm all about anything that can grow. And, I know the limitations with getting startups are that you don't have the money to hire, a staff to build this. I mean, you're probably getting volunteers and people that are trying to launch this thing while they're still doing everything else they do in their life. But
right. We're on our third set of volunteers.
Yeah. Yeah.
So and I don't know why the other people left, but they obviously left for a reason. Right. And if every 2 years you're going through a completely different staff, like and you haven't put on a race. Like when Adrian did the first OCRWC, he held a race and it was good. The OCRWC 2014 was really good. And every year it's gotten better, and they've given away, well into the 6 digits in prize money at this point. And then I look at them. So they've been around since 2014, held events annually minus 2020, giving away hundreds of that, like 6 figures cumulatively in prize money. And then I look at this other brand, FISO, and I see them not doing anything, adding bureaucracy, and putting their label on events that are already occurring. So like, I just have a moment of pause. And maybe I'm wrong. Maybe their hearts are in the right place, and this is what we need to kind of take the sport to the next level. But it looks like they've just taken the OCRWC model, and they're just going to try to do the same exact thing, but cash in on it. Versus, like, previously, I thought that what they were doing is they were going to try to make like a push for the Olympics. All right, we're going to have this one standardized course. This is the only thing we're going to put on, and I think that would be great, right? Like if they were the sole holders of Olympic OCR that was very standardized, I think that would be super cool. And then they leave kind of the X Games version of OCR, which is OCRWC, with variability to OCRWC. But
yeah, but I guess for me, just kind of like adding, like putting your label on other events isn't really the same thing as like developing a championship type of, kind of what you're saying, like a streamlined. But I'm glad the sport's growing enough to where these are things that are popping up. But for me as an athlete, it's not something that I will be putting on my agenda or on my goals for this upcoming year. But I will just kind of watch it and see. I mean, I plan, one of my big goals for 2023 is I really want to get to OCRWC. So, that's important to me, and that will be what I consider my championship race, in obstacle course racing next year for me personally as an athlete. And I'll probably see you there, Evan.
Yeah. I think OCRWC is the championships because everyone says it's the championships, right? It's a collective, like, yes, this is the championship event. Just like we all say about money is valuable because we all agree that it is valuable, right? Same concept. And I don't think, I know for a fact that FISO has not built up that reputation in the last, I think they started in, I want to say 2017, in the last 5 years. Will they do it in 2023? If history repeats itself, they won't. Could they? They could. And maybe I'm completely wrong. And maybe we got a new group of athletes that are working behind the scenes to kind of get this thing going. I
hope they do. And maybe that'll be something I look at in 2024, and beyond. But at least for me for this year, I don't think that those events will be things that I'll be, at least the Triple Crown as a competitive, pro elite athlete, that Triple Crown is not something I'm going to be personally going after.
I will say, if you have the travel budget and are decent, you would do, like, and I'm saying, putting this as a general statement, like, you would do well at the Triple Crown because of the 3 locations. And as you mentioned, the time, resources, money, and effort it requires. Like, just simply showing up, you'll probably fall, because I imagine there's not going to be many people who show up to all 3, right? Like, I think if you're decent and you show up to all 3, you'll end up in the top 10.
Yeah, I mean, because if I look at, like, I think of myself as an athlete pretty versatile on that scale of 100-meter tough obstacle, race, and I could go out and put down the 24. But I've already got a lot of great stuff lined up for this year, and the money it would cost for me to do the Triple Crown and the time would cancel out like a lot of the other great things. So I'll just be focusing on OCRWC as my kind of high level championship event in the Savage Series as well.
Yeah, I think Chris Roglowski obviously would do well.
She would do great.
I think Amy Pajic from our team would do really well if she was interested in traveling all the way there. So,
yeah. Well, we'll see, Evan.
And then honestly, if you can do well in 2 of the events or 1 or 2 and then just show up and participate in the 3rd, again, I don't think the depth of competition will be there because most people will not have the expendable income to just blow on.
Yeah, I would be curious to see if it would drive any international athletes more into World's Toughest Mudder. I think that'll be kind of an interesting thing to see happen too. If it really does launch and gets a lot of traction, and as far as like on a competition level, I'd be curious to see, how that could drive competition over it and that race here.
Yeah. So we'll see.
We'll see.
Keep our ears open. I know some of the other podcasts, I want to say Matt Davis from ORM had someone from Obstacle Sports Federations on there. So
okay.
I haven't gone back and I haven't actually listened to that yet. So yeah, I might listen to that before next time.
Maybe you'll have some time on a plane next week.
That is true.
Listen to that catch up. But
right.
Well, I'm really excited. Looking forward to seeing you next week and then catching everybody up on the post race.
Yeah. So make sure you're following. We're gonna try cross posting across everything, right? Between basically anytime we post, our personal pages, but then also Strength and Speed and Mud Gear Battle Lines Pro Team. So make sure you're following all those. We'll try to cross-post as much as we can. However, occasionally I forget to tag someone, so you get a mix of everything. And again, we land on the 10th. So you'll start getting content basically on the 10th, and then through the 11th, 12th, and 13th, and then a little bit.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to putting some content together so I can also get back with people. And, it may be a little limited there based on like service and Wi-Fi, but at least when I get back, really looking forward to sharing that experience with everyone.
Good stuff. And we'll also do a post-event podcast. I might squeeze a different one in between.
Yeah.
So you just don't get me and Rachel running our mouths the whole time.
Yeah, they're going to boo me. You're going to start getting complaints here soon. Actually, maybe if we did video, it would be better, Evan.
Yeah, but that's more of, I don't know.
I'm just kidding. No, but anyway, me.
So on the last, me and Rachel did a live stream on Facebook, and we had someone say that Rachel is, what was it? Not bad to look at.
Yeah. So like Evan, great content. Rachel has good energy and not bad to look at. And I thought it was funny. Guess I'm not too bad to look at, huh?
we thought that was pretty funny. So
get a good laugh. But
we did have a bunch of people staying and continue to listen. So I'm going to credit that with Rachel, because I feel like normally a lot of people come and go real quickly.
I'm only just a little bit prettier than Evan, but it depends on what your tastes are, actually, you know.
Fair enough.
Well, thanks for having me, Evan, and I look forward to seeing you next week.
All right. Sounds good. We'll catch you all later.
Bye.